The night Kwon Jae-il walked into the wrong room changed everything. It was 11:47 p.m. when he stepped through the unmarked steel door in the basement of the Mapo district warehouse, expecting to find his men waiting. What he found instead was a massacre. 3 of his lieutenants lay on the concrete floor, each one bound at the wrists with black nylon rope. The kind his rival, Park Dong-soo, favored. The air smelled like iron and cigarette smoke. A single bulb swung overhead. Jae-il did not run. He did not flinch. He pulled back his jacket, reached for the SIG sour at his hip, and scanned the room with eyes that had seen this kind of darkness before, had, in fact, created some of it. "You came alone," a voice said from behind a stack of shipping crates. "That was stupid." "I know," Jae-il said. "That means I wanted you to think I did." A beat of silence. Then the sound of 4 men stepping out from the shadows. The first one raised a gun. Jae-il moved before the hammer clicked, sideways, low, one fluid pivot, and the shot cracked into the wall behind him. He closed the distance in 2 seconds. The gun hand broke at the wrist. The man screamed. Jae-il spun him into the second man's path, used the collision to drive an elbow into the third man's jaw, and by the time the fourth one found his footing, the muzzle of Jae-il's SIG was already pressed against the underside of his chin. "Tell Dong-soo," Jae-il said quietly, "that the next time he touches my people, I will not send a message. I will deliver one myself." The man's eyes were wet with terror. He nodded. Jae-il lowered his weapon, stepped over the groaning body on the floor, and walked out into the Seoul night like he had simply finished a late dinner. Nobody who saw him in the hospital hallways at 7 a.m. the next morning would ever have believed it. In those hallways, he was Dr. Kwon. The one nurses whispered about in the break room. The one attendings respected and interns feared. The one with the hands precise enough to operate on a 3mm aneurysm, while maintaining a resting heart rate of 58. He wore his white coat the way other men wore confidence, like it had always belonged to him. And every woman in Seoul Grace Hospital wanted him. Every woman except one. Her name was Amara Osei. 28 years old, Ghanaian Korean, raised between Accra and Incheon by a mother who told her daily that she was made of iron and fire. She worked trauma nursing on the 4th floor with the calm efficiency of someone who had decided long ago that falling apart was simply not an option. She had noticed Dr. Kwon on her first week. Of course she had. Everyone noticed him. But where other nurses leaned against the station counter and found reasons to pass his office, Amara had catalogued him the way she catalogued everything, quickly, efficiently, and without sentiment. Skilled. Arrogant in the specific way that men who have never been told no tend to be. Surrounded at all times by a low-frequency current of female attention that he accepted the way one accepts weather, without gratitude and without complaint. She had moved on to other thoughts within 40 seconds. This was, of course, the very thing that undid him. The first time he spoke to her directly was at the nursing station on a Thursday morning. He had set a chart on the counter and said her name, her full name, not the shortened version some of the staff used, and when she looked up, he smiled. It was the kind of smile that had probably stopped other women mid-sentence. "Nurse Osei. I wanted to say, the observation notes you left on the Kim patient last night were exceptional. I used them in rounds this morning." She looked at him for one full second. "That is what observation notes are for," she said, and went back to her chart. He stood there a beat longer than necessary. Then he walked away. His second-in-command, Sung Minute, was waiting for him by the elevator. Sung Minute had grown up with Jae-il in the back streets of Mapo, had seen him take down 3 armed men with his bare hands, had watched him negotiate with the heads of 4 crime families without blinking. The look on Sung Minut's face right now was one of pure, undisguised entertainment. Not even a smile. Sung Minut said. She was busy, Jae-il said. She was looking right at you. She was being professional. Jae-il. She looked at you the way I look at a hospital vending machine. Neutral. Passing. Completely unimpressed. Jae-il stepped into the elevator. Go arrange the Dongsu meeting. Changing the subject, Sung Minut said, grinning as the doors closed between them. Interesting. If you are already hooked, drop a comment below, because this story is just getting started. Hit that like button so more people find this. He asked her to dinner 3 days later. He had thought about it, which was itself unusual. He had chosen the moment carefully, end of her shift, the hallway quiet, no audience. He had not rehearsed words, because he had never needed to. I would like to take you to dinner, he said. Tomorrow evening. There is a restaurant in Hanam-dong I think you would enjoy. She zipped her bag closed, looked up at him with an expression he could not fully read, and said, No thank you, doctor. No. He said it before he could stop himself, as though the word had arrived in a language he did not speak. No, she confirmed, and walked past him toward the exit. He stood in the hallway alone for 4 full seconds, before he recovered enough to move. It was not his ego that kept him awake that night. He had enough self-awareness to know the difference between wounded pride and something more honest. What sat on his chest all night was the particular weight of being seen clearly and found uninteresting. Because that was what her expression had said, in that brief moment before she answered. Not cruelty. Not even dismissal. Just assessment. Clean and complete. He had been assessed and filed under, not worth the time. He could not explain why that felt like a door closing on something he had not known he wanted to enter. He tried again a week later, in the hospital cafeteria, sliding his tray 2 seats down from hers, because every other seat in the room was taken. It was not entirely untrue. You eat here, she said, not looking up from the medical journal open beside her tray. Occasionally. The attendings usually eat on the 7th floor. The 7th floor coffee is terrible. She turned a page. He ate his soup. 2 minutes passed in silence that, on his end at least, was not entirely comfortable. Why did you say no? He asked. She looked up then. Something shifted slightly in her expression, not surprise, exactly. More like recalibration. Because men like you collect women, she said. You are not looking for someone to know. You are looking for someone to have. I am not interested in being collected. She closed her journal, picked up her tray, and left. He sat at the table long after his soup was cold. She was right. He knew she was right the moment the words landed, which made it worse. He had been running his entire adult life on a version of himself that was all surface and competence, the surgeon, the boss, the untouchable, and somewhere under all of that was a man who had not let anyone close in so long that he had nearly forgotten the shape of what close felt like. She had identified that in 4 minutes and 2 sentences. He did not know what to do with a woman who could do that. So he did what he always did with problems he could not solve directly, he approached from the side. It started small. Her favorite tea, the Ghanaian brand blend she special ordered from a shop in Itaewon, began appearing anonymously at the 4th floor nursing station. Someone left a research article on a drug interaction she had flagged in a patient note, printed, highlighted in yellow, slid under the triage binder. When she arrived for a night shift on a Thursday to find the department's broken heating unit had been repaired overnight, a repair that had been on the maintenance list for 6 weeks, she stood in the warm hallway for a moment with an expression that nobody saw. Nobody except Jae-il, who was passing the 4th floor for the 2nd time that morning by complete coincidence. Sung Minute found him studying a Chi language learning application on his phone during what was supposed to be a briefing about the Dongsu situation. What, Sung Minute said slowly, are you doing? Learning. In Chi. Her family is Ghanaian. Her mother speaks it at home. She grew up with it. Sung Minute sat down across from him with the expression of a man watching something historic and slightly alarming unfold. Illinois. You once refused to learn the Busan dialect for a business negotiation worth 40 million won. This is different. I can see that. Do not say anything. I am not saying anything, Sung Minute said. I am just sitting here watching the most feared man in the Mapo underworld learn how to say good morning in Chi for a woman who rejected him twice. Twice. I am simply witnessing. Silently. Illinois turned the phone face down on the table. The Dongsu meeting. Tell me. Main, Sung Minute said. What? It means good morning. In Chi. Just in case you needed it. Illinois looked at him for a long moment, then quietly picked the phone back up. The night that changed the geometry of everything between them started with a child they could not save. She was 7 years old, brought in by ambulance after a road accident in the Mapo district. The trauma team worked on her for 41 minutes. Illinois was called in from another floor. He operated with every precision his hands possessed. It was not enough. The damage was too extensive. At 1:52 a.m., they called it. He changed out of his surgical scrubs in silence. He walked the corridors for a while without destination, which he never did. Then he took the elevator to the rooftop. She was already there. Amara was sitting on the low concrete ledge that ran along the rooftop's edge, still in her scrubs, her braids loose around her shoulders, looking out at the spread of Seoul lights below. She did not look like she was crying. She looked like she had moved to a place beyond crying, that quiet, hollow country that grief sometimes leaves you in when you have been professional for too long and the weight finally finds you. He almost turned back. He did not. He sat down beside her. Not close. Just beside. He loosened his tie, undid the top button of his shirt, and looked out at the same skyline. He did not say he was sorry. He did not say she had done everything right. He did not say the things people said in these moments, the soft, well-meaning sentences that land like stones on raw skin. He said nothing. 20 minutes passed. The city hummed below them. A delivery truck moved through an intersection far beneath. The hospital behind them breathed its steady mechanical breath. You did not have to stay, she said finally. Her voice was quiet. Not unfriendly. I know, he said. She looked at him then. Really looked, not the clinical assessment of their cafeteria encounter, but something longer, more uncertain. Main, he said quietly. She went still. It means good morning, he said. I know it is not morning. I have been practicing, and that is the only word I have so far. Something moved across her face. Something that was not quite a smile, and was not quite not one. Your pronunciation is terrible, she said. I know. She looked back at the city. He looked back at the city. But this time the silence between them had a different texture, less distance in it, more something else. Something he had not allowed himself to name. If this story is moving you right now, smash that like button and subscribe, so you never miss an episode. The next part will shake you. 3 weeks later, Amara's world cracked open. Her younger brother Kofi called her at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. He was 22, studying logistics management at a university in Sinchon, living in a shared apartment with 3 friends. He had always been the lighter one, the one who laughed easily, moved through the world without her particular brand of armor. The call lasted 40 seconds and ended with voices in the background that were not his friends, and then silence. She called back 17 times. By the time she reached his apartment, his roommates told her he had been picked up the night before by men in a black SUV. They had thought it was friends. They had not asked questions, because Kofi had not seemed scared. Amara went to the police. She filed a report. She called the Ghanaian consulate. She called every number she had. She sat in plastic chairs in fluorescent-lit offices while people with sympathetic expressions told her they were looking into it and to please wait for updates. She waited 4 hours. Then she went back to the police station and told the detective in charge that if he used the phrase, "We are doing our best," one more time, without giving her a concrete next step, she was going to sit in his office and not leave until there was one. He gave her a next step. It led nowhere. She was in the hospital break room at midnight, 3 days into the nightmare, when she found out that Kofi had unknowingly been working part-time as a courier for a distribution network that fronted for Park Dong-soo's operation. He had not known what he was carrying. He had needed money for tuition. Someone had offered easy work. He had said yes. Now Dong-soo had him, and the reason was not Kofi. The reason was pressure on someone else entirely. Kofi was a message. An instrument. Amara sat in the break room with this information, completely still, for 11 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and called the one person she had decided, with everything in her, that she was not going to call. Illinois answered on the second ring. "I need to ask you something," she said. "And I need you to tell me the truth." "Ask," he said. His voice was completely different from the hospital. Deeper. Quieter. Like a room with everything removed from it. "Are you connected to the Mapo networks?" A pause. Short. Precise. "Why are you asking me this?" "My brother is missing. I believe Park Dong-soo has him. I have exhausted every legal channel. I need you to tell me if you can help, or if I am wrong about you and I should stop wasting time." Another pause. Longer. "Where are you right now?" "Break room. 4th floor. Do not leave the hospital. I will come to you." He told her in the rooftop stairwell, 2 floors below where they had sat together in the dark. He told her plainly. No softening, no deflection. The Kwon Syndicate. His father's network, which he had taken over at 26 when his father died, and the only other options were dissolution or domination by a worse man. What they controlled. What they did not do. He was precise about the lines he had maintained, about the communities in the Korean African Business District that the syndicate had originally been built to protect from exploitation, and still did. She listened without moving. When he finished, she said, "So when the heating in our department was fixed? When the drug interaction article appeared? When Kofi's courier contract was quietly not renewed 3 months ago, before any of this happened?" He said nothing. Which was its own answer. "You have been watching out for us," she said. Not warmly. Just the fact of it. "I have been watching out for you," he said. The distinction was quiet and unmistakable. She looked at him for a long moment. Something complicated moved through her expression. Anger layered over something else, layered over something else still. "Can you get my brother back?" "Yes." "How long?" 24 hours. Maybe less. "And the cost?" He looked at her steadily. "Nothing you have to pay." She turned and walked back down the stairs without another word. He stood in the stairwell alone, listening to her footsteps fade, and felt the specific weight of a man who has just handed someone the truest version of himself, and is now waiting to see what they do with it. Kofi was home in 16 hours. He called his sister crying, confused, grateful, shaken. Amara sat on her apartment floor and held the phone to her ear and said, I know, until he calmed down. Then she put the phone down and sat in the silence of her living room for a long time. She had never wanted to feel what she was beginning to feel about Kwon Jae-il. It was inconvenient and dangerous and built on a foundation of secrets. It was also, she was becoming unable to deny, entirely real. She pulled back anyway. She was polite at the hospital. Professionally warm. Exactly as she had been before the rooftop, before the cafeteria, before any of it. She returned to the version of herself that had looked at him and seen furniture, except now it required effort, and effort leaves marks. He noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed everything about her. He did not push. He did not appear at her nursing station with reasons. He gave her the space she was creating between them with the same discipline he applied to everything, completely, without visible seam. What she did not see was what the space was costing him. Sung Minute saw it. You look like you have not slept in a week, Sung Minute said one evening, finding Jae-il in his hospital office at 10 p.m., staring at a patient file he clearly was not reading. I am fine. You operated for 9 hours today, and then sat here instead of going home. When did you last eat something that was not from a vending machine? The Dong-soo situation is contained. The Jung-ji-yu accounts are settled. What else needs my attention? You, Sung Minute said. You need your attention. He sat down across from him. Jae-il. When was the last time you wanted something for yourself? Not for the network. Not for the patients. For you. Jae-il said nothing. She scared you, Sung Minute said quietly. Not because she found out. Because before she found out, she already saw you clearly, and she still sat on that rooftop with you. And that terrified you more than anything Dong-soo has ever done. The silence in the office was very complete. Go home, Jae-il said finally. Call her, Sung Minute said, standing. He did not call her. Not that night. Not the next. Instead he drove to Busan. His grandmother's house sat at the edge of a hill neighborhood in Busan, overlooking a harbor that at night looked like scattered stars on dark water. She was 73, half Korean, half Nigerian, still sharp enough to beat him at Barduk 3 games out of 4, and still unsettling enough to say the thing nobody else would say. She opened the door before he knocked. She had always done this. You look terrible, she said in the blended Korean Yoruba that was their private language, the one that existed nowhere else in the world. Halmioni. Come inside. Eat first. Talk later. He ate. Then he sat across from her at her kitchen table with his hands wrapped around a cup of barley tea, and told her about Amara. He had not planned to tell her everything. He told her everything. She listened with the particular quality of attention she had always given him, complete, unhurried, with eyes that held his without pressure. When he finished, she was quiet for a while. The women who were easy, she said finally, were never meant for you. You need someone who will stand in front of you and tell you the truth. Someone who will not be managed. She has every reason not to trust what I am. She has every reason not to trust the surface of what you are, his grandmother corrected. But she sat on that roof with you in the dark and did not leave. She called you when she was most afraid. People do not do that for men they have assessed and dismissed. She looked at him across the table. She is pulling back, because she is trying to protect herself from how much she already feels. That is not the same as not feeling it. He drove back to Seoul in the grey early morning with the city assembling itself around him in light, and sound and motion, and for the first time in a long time felt something that was not certainty, but was adjacent to it. The direction, at least. A door that might still be open. If you are feeling this story in your chest right now, subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell. Share this with someone who needs a love story with real weight to it. He found her at the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon, waiting for an elevator that was taking too long. He did not rehearse what to say. He had decided, somewhere on the Busan highway in the grey morning, that he was done managing this. Amara. She turned. Her expression did what it always did when she first saw him now, a brief, controlled rearrangement. I am not going to pretend, he said. I have been trying to give you distance, and I am not built for it. Not with you. I need you to know something, and then you can tell me to walk away and I will. The elevator arrived. Neither of them moved. You were right about everything you said in the cafeteria. I was collecting. I have spent 15 years letting people see exactly the version of me that served the moment, the surgeon, the boss, the man who has everything under control. You refused to look at that version. And I did not know what to do with a person who could see the gap between what I present and what I am. The elevator doors closed. I am not asking you to accept what I do outside this hospital. I am not asking you to want something dangerous or complicated. I am asking you, just once, to tell me if what you feel when we are in the same room is only professional. Because if it is, I will leave you alone. But if it is not. It is not, she said. He stopped. It is not professional, she said again, quieter. And I am frustrated with myself about it. Because you are exactly as complicated as I thought you were. I was right to be careful. And I am still standing here. He looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his face, not the controlled, surface shift she had seen before, but something deeper. The specific vulnerability of a man who is no longer performing. You are the only person who has ever made me want to be known, he said. Not managed. Known. She pressed the elevator button again. Come have tea with me, she said. Just tea. And you tell me something true. Something you have never told anyone. Anything. Something real. He stepped into the elevator beside her. I cry in my car sometimes, he said. After the ones we lose. I drive to the parking structure, on the 5th level where there is no camera coverage and I sit there. He paused. Nobody knows that. She looked at him. He looked at the elevator doors. Okay, she said softly. That is real. The first real evening they spent together was not in the Hanamdong restaurant he had once suggested. It was in her apartment in Mapo, which was small and warm and smelled like the Ghanaian palm oil she cooked with and the citrus diffuser by her window. He showed up with groceries. She had told him she would cook. He had said he would help. What followed was 45 minutes of barely organized chaos. Him attempting to follow her instructions on kaluele, frying plantains at a temperature she told him twice was too high, insisting it was fine, and then standing back wordlessly while she rescued them. And her standing at his elbow while he made doenjang jigigi from memory, adjusting the seasoning 3 times, before she admitted it smelled extraordinary. It always smells like this, he said. Do not be smug about it, she said. I am not being smug. I am being accurate. Those are the same thing when you do it. He smiled. And it was a different smile from the hallway one, smaller, less constructed, reaching somewhere in his face that the other one never did. She saw it and looked quickly back at the stove. They ate at her small table with a Ghanaian high life album playing softly from her speaker, and a Korean drama she had been watching paused on her laptop in the corner. Somewhere around the second bowl of jigigi, she told him about growing up between Accra and Incheon, the specific strangeness of being two things in two places, that each expected you to be only one. There would be a night, 6 months later, when Kofi called again, this time just to talk, just to tell his sister about a girl he had met in his logistics class, and Amara sat in the warm living room of her apartment while Jae-il slept in the next room, and felt for the first time in years that the particular ache of carrying everything alone had become something different. Not lighter, exactly. Shared. There would be the morning his grandmother called from Busan, and he put the phone on speaker without thinking, and his grandmother spoke to Amara in Yoruba mixed with Korean mixed with a little English, and Amara answered back in Chi mixed with Korean, and Jae-il stood in the kitchen doorway listening to the two of them, his two worlds, his grandmother and this woman, speak to each other in the beautiful broken language of people who had always been between things and had learned to make that in between a home. His grandmother said to him afterward, in their private language, "She is the one. You know she is the one." "I know," he said. "Good. Then stop looking like you are waiting for something to go wrong." He laughed. Properly. Not the controlled, surface version. The real one, low and sudden and slightly surprised at itself. She heard it from the other room and smiled at the ceiling. The doctor almost every woman craved had been rejected by the one who mattered, and it had devastated him, not because of his pride, but because she had been right. He had been a man with everything except the one thing that was real. He had needed someone who would look at him fully and not look away, and still say no until the answer could be honest. She had been that person from the moment she looked at him and went back to her chart. She had known what she was doing, even then. Some people do. If this story reached something in you, subscribe to this channel right now. Leave a comment telling us which moment hit you hardest. Share this with one person who needs to hear that real love begins the moment someone refuses to be collected. Like this video so this story finds the people it was made for. We will see you in the next one. Years later, people who worked the 4th floor of Seoul Grace Hospital would still talk about the two of them. Not loudly, and not with the gossipy hunger of people who had not seen it up close. They talked about it the way people talk about whether that changed the year, quietly, with a kind of reverence for something they had witnessed, but could not quite explain. They talked about how he used to walk differently after her. How the precision was still there, the authority, the unnerving stillness in a crisis, but something underneath it had softened at the edges, the way very hard stone softens when water has moved over it long enough. How he started saying good morning to the orderlies and the overnight security staff, learning their names in a way he never had before. They talked about how she changed too, though it was harder to see because Amara had always been composed. What they noticed was that she laughed more easily. That she started bringing extra food to night shifts, always too much, always homemade, always placed at the nursing station without announcement. That she began staying a few minutes past her shifts to check on the families of long-term patients, a thing she had always believed in, but had always been too careful with her own time to indulge. He made her less afraid of needing people. She made him less afraid of being one. On a Thursday evening, 8 months into whatever they were to each other, she found a printed sheet on her nursing station binder. It was a research article on adrenal fatigue in trauma nurses, highlighted in yellow, a single sticky note in handwriting she knew attached to the corner. The note said, in very careful, slightly imperfect Chi, Hui wo ho. Take care of yourself. She stood at the nursing station and read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in the front pocket of her scrubs, close to her chest, and went back to work. A month after that, during a night shift that ran 3 hours past its end, she fell asleep in the break room. He came in at 4 a.m. to leave her tea, the Ghanaian brand blend from the Itaewon shop, which he had long since arranged to have stocked at the hospital, and found her asleep at the table with her head on her arms and her braids spread around her like something quiet and complete. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he went and found the good blanket that the charge nurse kept in the supply closet, the thick one that was not supposed to leave the ward, and draped it over her shoulders without waking her. He sat down across from her, and in the grey 4 a.m. quiet of the hospital break room, he did something he had not done in years. He simply sat. No phone. No briefing. No version of himself being watched, or required or managed. Just a man, awake in the dark, watching the woman he loved sleep. Outside, Seoul was running its overnight self, the trucks and the cleaners and the people who kept the city going while everyone else rested. Inside, the hospital hummed its steady breath. He thought about his grandmother's harbor, about the scattered lights on dark water, about the boy he had been before the weight of the network had settled onto him and become indistinguishable from who he was. He thought about the stairwell where he had told her the truth and waited to see what she would do with it. He thought about the rooftop and the silence and the single word that had cracked something open between them, Maine. Good morning. She stirred slightly, pulling the blanket closer without waking. He smiled, not the hallway smile, not the controlled one. The real one. Kwon Jae-il, the ghost of the Mapo underworld, the surgeon who had never been told no, the man who had built 15 years of fortress around himself, and called it living, sat in a hospital break room at 4 a.m. with a cup of cooling tea and felt, without qualification and without fear, at peace. She had rejected him. It had devastated him. And it had been, without question, the best thing that had ever happened to him. Because it had forced him to become the man she was actually willing to know. And that man, it turned out, was the one he had been trying to find all along.